This evening we've got three guests who are joining us, who are all creatives in different areas of the creative sector. And we're going to be discussing the creative process. So we're joined by Terry Mardy and Terry Ann Creaser and Derek Pierce. So Terry Mardy is a TV and film producer and also a music publisher. He produced a series in 2015 called Premature, which aired on Sky, but you can now watch it on YouTube. So I recommend you just go and have a look at that. He also runs a company called Terry Mardy Group, which does all sorts of things, but I think you're mostly working with Asian youth audiences around sort of culture and media. Terry Ann Creaser is one part of Tell Be Told Theatre Company, who work with different communities to devise their own productions. As an actress, she's appeared on stage as well as in short films and commercials. And Derek Pierce is a artist working in wood, who produces pieces for exhibition, as well as some rather interesting items of furniture as well. He's also worked as a musician and composer for theatre, film and TV, toured with a comedy band called The Roaring Jelly, and he's got an album out recently of climate change songs called Where in a Jam, What's the Plan? I wondered first, as way of introduction, if each of you might like to tell us about something either that you're working on at the moment or something that you kind of recently completed, if there's any particular project that you fancy telling us about.
Yes, well, good evening, everyone. Something I'm working on at the moment, music-wise, actually. I'm considering working on a new drama series at Liger Films, which is our film organization, with my partner there, Rohit. And I've decided that this year I wanted to ask him if I could approach this from a music soundtrack perspective. So could I create a pilot soundtrack before we get anywhere close to the visuals? So that's an interesting way that my mind seems to want to tell a story using sound as opposed to pictures and actors. So that's something I've just recently started.
That's really fascinating. It sounds like it's really being led by the idea as well.
That's right. Rohit, who's the writer and will be the director of the project, sent me a treatment and the first episode script of a series. And immediately we started having conversations about what sound might occur. And it's not typical of a drama series in that genre to have music throughout, but we just thought we'd defy the norm. And given that I've spent a lot of 2020 in this post-COVID world learning and sort of picking up new electrical instruments, I thought, why not combine these two things together and feel at least like we're taking a different approach. Maybe we'll end up in the same place we'll never know. But about a month or two ago, he gave me the first episode script. It was what he calls a rough draft, and he sent it over to me, and I took my time reading it and had a sort of a post-reading digest conversation with him, which usually goes on for a couple of hours, where we sort of really thrash out the characters. And I question and I sort of ask, what are the moods and the energies and the emotions of these characters and the subplots and the arcs. And sort of in my mind, once upon a time, I'm not sure what's happened recently, but I start to now hear things in my mind before I see things in my mind. I went from a very visual thinking method to now hearing things in my head more, which can come across like I'm maybe losing it a little bit, but maybe I am. But this is definitely the approach I want to sort of take. And sort of he agreed. And so I've just read the treatment and only two episode scripts, draft scripts, and already started to think about what the soundtrack to the entire series might sound like.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. And sometimes losing it a bit is what you need to throw up some novel ideas, turn things on the head a bit. So yeah, I look forward to seeing what happens with that. Terry Ann, would you like to go next?
Hello. Yeah, it's been a funny old year, hasn't it? Yeah, so the last couple of years, we've spent quite a lot of time working on plays around heritage and very local to this area. So taking stories of local history and then shaping plays out of that. At the same time, we've been touring on and off a piece about homelessness with families in temporary accommodation, using their stories to shape the performance. So that's been quite strange, doing these sort of historical plays that are about educating, but in a fun, entertaining way, and then taking this play that was about families in temporary accommodation and putting that out there, but both quite loyal to our style. So we're very much about audience interaction and telling a story and telling people's stories. At the start of this year, we were quite convinced we were going to spend time working on pieces around identity. And in February, we had a lovely sharing at a creatives night that a few of you were there, and it was awesome. And that was all shaped around identity. And that was where we were sure we were going. And then obviously Corona hit. And for a few months of this year, I don't know, I think there's been a real shift in terms of just focusing on getting through it, and not like, I know creative processes can help deal with it, but sometimes you've just got to muddle through for yourself. But we've also been at the same time running another company that's all about sport and fitness to aid mental well-being, and that's something that I'm very, very interested in. But we're picking things up again, and now we're looking at creating a piece, looking at the fact that we have to be socially isolated at the moment, and how does that affect identity, and also looking at rituals and what new rituals are we starting to adopt, and what's that new normal. Yeah, but we're very keen to not create a play about coronavirus, because I think we're all we don't want to sort of hop on the bandwagon. Oh, here's a play about coronavirus. But we definitely are very interested in identity, in how it is to be socially isolated, and then we're very much looking at rituals that society forms, and we're forming new ones right now. You know, the whole hand washing and face masks. It's a new ritual, and new habits are forming, aren't they, through necessity? But we're looking at picking at that. But we're in very early stages, and I think I wish I'd brought him in, but the other half of Tell Be Told Theatre is Coolraj, and we've worked, it's always me and him that work on our performances, and we've got quite an organic process, I'll call it, and it can take a long time to get to a point that we're ready to make a play, and that can involve a long period of just talking and looking at ideas that we've got and debating. Coolraj is very, very interested in psychology. He's studying psychodrama therapy. I've got to get it right because they'll tell me off. Psychodrama therapy at the moment. So he's like pulling out all these terms and ideas that we're hoping to weave in with this new idea. I hope I've answered the question. I'll go off on one a little bit.
Absolutely.
But that's where we're at. Yeah.
And several others as well.
Yeah. I do that, sorry.
So, I mean, it's obviously very hard to put on theatre, or perhaps even impossible at the moment.
Well, do you know what? We had a bit of time when we were like, oh, we're going to have to put something out on, we'll have to film something and put something out on film. And then we were like, well, we're not filmmakers. And then it felt like, well, if we just try and get something out for the sake of getting something out, then we're going to lose Tell Be Told in the process. It will just be, we're a couple of people trying to put on a very sketchy film when we're not filmmakers. We don't particularly know what we're doing there. Yeah, it's just really trying to gauge how things are, really, because a lot of our work is with communities as well. All the work we do is shaped by communities, for communities, and if you can't get into those communities, it's tricky, isn't it, to do that? So it's finding new ways to connect with them. The work we've been doing with the sports company is really because we're getting to communities in different ways, so we're hoping eventually to somehow bring the two together. But yeah, it's been a very interesting year, and some of it is just you know, how can we devise a piece together where, you know, a lot of this year we weren't allowed to be together because of lockdown restrictions and all sorts. It's like, do we Zoom our rehearsals, or it's very strange.
It'll be very interesting to see how you can bring sport and theatre together. It sounds like something that might have been commissioned for the Olympics. And how about Derek? Have you got something you'd like to tell us about?
Yes, but what I've found about all the lockdown stuff is an opportunity to get out of the cycle of things where we do things because we've always done that, and we get up and get tomorrow and do the same thing. So it made me focus more on the reasons for you know, for making a piece of art. What, you know, am I just trying to show somebody how clever I am, or am I trying to say something? So it's a soul-searching thing, really. One of the things that I mean, I've been lucky that I've been able to self-isolate, and I've got my own studio, and I can go and work, and I can carry on. I've been able to focus more on what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And the whole the whole virus thing, I kept coming back to the fact that people saying, well, when we get back to normal, or when we get back to the new normal, or whatever it was, or whatever it is, but the reminding myself that the normal was a crisis in terms of the you know, the climate change issues. And so I've been doing more work on that. I did the album of climate songs, which I'd recorded before the virus happened, and I spent a while on the phone with the studio, and we mixed them over the phone, and then I put them out on Spotify, and these were songs which were making a point and asking questions and being humorous and just focusing more on an even bigger, more important issue. And since the virus started, you know, people have locked into the BBC News, and every day in the last 6 months, they've talked about the virus. And the climate change issues are far, far more important than that. And so it's getting people to understand the predicament we're in. And so I've made a series of pieces which are all carved in wood. And I work in wood, but I work in all sorts of materials. I've done a lot of work in theatre, and you know, you basically it's about talking about the music, Terry. You know, you're having an idea and trying to work out how to make the idea work. And my latest pieces are about fossil fuels, if you like. So they're beautifully polished, carved, full-size pieces of wood, and which are about fossil fuels. So there's a petrol can made out of sycamore and ebony, and then there's some single-use plastic bottles and food packaging, and then there's a bag of coal, all carved in wood, and then there's a gas boiler made out of wood. So they look like nice works of art, but the whole piece is called Relics of a Bygone Era, which is posing the question, you know, sooner or later we've got to get rid of these things. And so it's a bit political, it's a bit poignant, and they're nice pieces of wood, basically. And there's the whole language with materials. People don't really understand bronze, but they think it's, you know, the art material. But wood, people understand wood, and they understand that you've made it out of one solid lump or whatever. So that's what I've been doing of late.